8 a.m., I'm sipping black coffee by my fishing lake when 4 charter buses roar up my gravel drive and unload 50 rich strangers onto my private dock. Coolers, grills, fishing rods. Like my family's 40-year legacy is Disney Springs. HOA President Veronica Blackwell struts in wearing $800 designer heels, sinking into the muddy shoreline as diesel fumes choke the morning air. "Marcus!" she shrieks like a banshee. "You cannot block community access. This is community property." My blood boils. For 18 months, this entitled witch has been stealing my lakefront with fake surveys and bully lawyers. Today, she brought an army to trespass, but she forgot one thing. I'm a retired firefighter who reads property deeds for fun. What happened next? I destroyed her empire with documents she never saw coming. She lost her throne, her reputation, everything. Drop your HOA war story below. I'll reply to the craziest. Let me back up and tell you how this whole nightmare started. My name's Marcus Presley, and I'm a 45-year-old retired firefighter who thought inheriting my family's 40-year lakefront legacy would bring peace and quiet. Boy, was I wrong. 18 months ago, my grandfather passed and left me this beautiful 2-acre lot on Clearwater Lake, property he'd owned since 1978. The old ranch house needed work, sure, but that private fishing dock he'd built by hand? Priceless. I'd invested my entire pension, $180,000, buying surrounding parcels to expand our family's lakefront access, plus another $25,000 in dock improvements and fish habitat structures. Here's the thing about me. I'm that weird guy who reads property deeds for fun. 23 years of firefighting taught me that details save lives, and retirement gave me time to study every survey, easement, and boundary marker on my land. I knew my property rights better than most lawyers. Morning mist would rise off the water like ghosts while loons called across the lake. I'd sip coffee on rough wooden dock planks that still carried the scent of my grandfather's cedar oil treatments, breathing in the sweet honeysuckle growing wild along my shoreline. This was my sanctuary after decades of running into burning buildings. Pine Ridge HOA used to be simple. 47 homes, working families, retirees, $180 monthly dues for basic maintenance. But lately, the community had been attracting wealthier residents who expected premium amenities without premium prices. Enter Veronica Blackwell, our HOA president and luxury real estate agent. Picture a 52-year-old woman who treats the HOA presidency like her personal marketing department. She lives in our biggest house, drives a spotless white BMW, and has strong opinions about everything from mailbox colors to lawn height. But here's the kicker. She specializes in selling the exclusive lakefront lifestyle to wealthy clients. And she'd been promising them something that wasn't hers to give. It started innocently. 6 months after my dock renovations, I caught Veronica showing my property to well-dressed strangers. They were photographing my dock, pointing at my fish habitats, discussing my shoreline like they were evaluating a timeshare. "Excuse me," I said, walking over with my morning coffee still steaming. "This is private property." Veronica's smile could have frozen hell. "Oh, Marcus, I was just showing the Pattersons our community's exclusive lake access. They're considering the Morrison house." The metallic taste of anger filled my mouth. "Community lake access? This is my family's private dock." She laughed, this patronizing tinkle that made my skin crawl. "Well, of course it's technically private, but we've always had community access traditions. I've been advertising our lakefront lifestyle community for years. When real estate agents promise amenities they don't control, they're committing licensing violations that can cost them their careers. Material misrepresentation in property sales is grounds for immediate license revocation. But Veronica was just getting started. Over the next few months, she organized weekly lakefront lifestyle tours, bringing groups of 8, 12 wealthy prospects to my dock without permission. She posted in our Facebook group about shared waterfront heritage and scheduled community gatherings that mysteriously always happened on my property. I discovered she was charging premium prices for houses near the lake access, with several recent buyers specifically mentioning exclusive water privileges in their purchase decisions. 3 families had already complained to me about not getting the lake access they'd paid extra for. The woman had turned my peaceful inheritance into a real estate scam, and I was the unwitting star of her marketing show. The breaking point came when I returned from grocery shopping to find 15 strangers having a barbecue party on my lawn. Expensive cars parked wherever they pleased, kids jumping off my dock, and Veronica standing there with a clipboard like she owned the place. "And here's our premium community lakefront amenity," she was telling a couple in designer clothes. perfect for entertaining and building property value. The smell of lighter fluid poisoning my peaceful morning air, mixed with the sound of strangers laughing on my grandfather's hand-built dock. That's when I realized this wasn't about neighborhood drama. This was about a real estate agent systematically defrauding buyers while stealing my family's legacy. Game on, Veronica. 3 weeks after the barbecue incident, Veronica kicked things into overdrive. She created something called the Lakefront Access Committee, which was basically just her and 2 neighbors she'd bribed with promises of reduced HOA dues. The committee's first official act? Scheduling a Welcome to Pine Ridge party for new resident Dr. Patricia Hawkins. Location, my dock. Time, Saturday afternoon. Permission asked, 0. I found out through our neighborhood Facebook group, where Veronica had posted a cheerful announcement complete with photos of my dock and a caption reading, "Join us at our beautiful community lakefront for Dr. Hawkins' welcome celebration. Bring a dish to share." The comments were pure gold. So exciting to finally use the lake access. Can't wait to see the community dock. This is why we pay premium prices here. My grandfather's dock had become Veronica's personal marketing tool, and she was doubling down hard. Saturday rolled around and I decided to let this train wreck play out. I parked myself on my back porch with a cold beer and my phone, ready to document whatever stupidity was about to unfold. The morning air still carried that sweet honeysuckle scent, but I had a feeling it was about to be ruined. At 2 p.m. sharp, cars started arriving. Not just a few neighbors, we're talking 25 vehicles parked on my lawn like I was hosting the county fair. Kids were running around with pool noodles, adults setting up folding tables, and someone had actually dragged a full sound system onto my dock. The smell of coconut sunscreen mixed with barbecue smoke as strangers made themselves completely at home. One guy in cargo shorts even asked if he could move my fishing chairs to make room for, I kid you not, a bounce house on my grandfather's hand-built dock. That's when Veronica spotted me watching from my porch. She strutted over in her signature white pants and gold jewelry, clipboard clutched like a weapon, her heels clicking on my walkway with military precision. "Marcus," she called out sweetly, "come join the party. Everyone's so excited to finally enjoy our community amenity." Community amenity? I stood up, beer still in hand. "Veronica, this is private property. You're hosting a party on my dock without permission." Her smile never wavered, but her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Don't embarrass yourself, Marcus. Mrs. Patterson always welcomed community use. We have traditional access rights." Here's where all those nights reading property law came in handy. I'd spent years studying legal documents as a hobby, occupational hazard of being around too many lawyers during fire investigations. Turns out, traditional access rights is complete legal nonsense. Real property rights come from documented deeds and recorded easements, period. You can't just declare someone else's land community property because it sounds nice. "Actually, Veronica," I said, pulling out my phone, "let me share something interesting I learned from the county property records." I opened the official survey documents, voice carrying across my lawn. Easements require explicit documentation and typically compensation to be legally valid. Funny thing, I can't find any recorded easements for community lake access anywhere in our HOA documents. Several party guests stopped their conversations to listen. The bounce house deflation sound provided perfect background noise. "I've also been reviewing your recent real estate listings," I continued, really warming up now. "Interesting how you advertise exclusive lakefront community and private lake access for houses that have 0 legal water rights." Veronica's face went from confident tan to panic attack pale in about 3 seconds. But the real bombshell came when Dr. Hawkins, the guest of honor herself, walked over looking mortified and confused. "Excuse me," she said, ignoring Veronica completely and addressing me directly. "I'm so sorry about this. Veronica specifically told me the lake access was included with my house purchase. I asked multiple times about water rights because that's the only reason I bought here. She assured me it was all completely legitimate and documented. The party atmosphere died faster than a fish on dry land. This wasn't just trespassing anymore. This was systematic real estate fraud, and Dr. Hawkins was living proof. "Dr. Hawkins," I said gently, "would you mind showing me what was actually promised in your purchase agreement?" Veronica practically lunged forward, desperation replacing her usual smugness. "That's not necessary. This is all a ridiculous misunderstanding." But Dr. Hawkins was already pulling out her phone. "I have the MLS listing right here. Look, exclusive community lakefront access, private dock privileges, premium waterfront lifestyle amenities included." Every word was documented fraud. License revoking, career-ending fraud. The party crowd was now openly staring as the truth hit them. Parents started collecting their kids, neighbors began whispering among themselves, and someone mercifully turned off the terrible music that had been assaulting my peaceful lake. "Veronica," I announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "you've been advertising amenities you don't own to inflate property values, and everyone here just witnessed it." Veronica's mask finally slipped completely. "Fine," she shrieked, all pretense gone. "If you want to be a selfish antisocial neighbor, I'll call the county about your unpermitted dock modifications. Your fish habitats are probably environmental violations too." That's when I smiled, because she'd just threatened me publicly, in front of 25 witnesses, while I was recording everything. "Please do," I said calmly. "I'd love for the county to inspect my fully permitted improvements and my award-winning fish habitat structures. While they're here, maybe they can investigate fraudulent real estate advertising practices." Veronica stormed off, heels hammering my dock like angry gunshots, but the damage was done. Round 1, Marcus. After the party disaster, Veronica went nuclear. Within 48 hours, she'd called an emergency community meeting about what she termed lakefront access equity issues. The agenda, posted on our Facebook group, read like a corporate takeover manual. Proposed special assessment, $75,000 for community lake rights acquisition, $75,000 to buy rights to property I already owned. The audacity was breathtaking. But here's where Veronica showed her true colors. She didn't just want money, she wanted to humiliate me publicly. The meeting notice included a passive-aggressive note. "All residents welcome to discuss how individual selfishness impacts community property values and neighborhood harmony." Translation: "Let's gang up on Marcus until he caves." Tuesday night, Pine Ridge Community Center was packed. 43 residents showed up, the highest attendance in HOA history. The stale smell of old coffee and industrial carpet cleaner filled the air as Veronica prepared her presentation like she was addressing the Supreme Court. She'd created a PowerPoint titled "Securing Our Community's Future," complete with slides showing pristine lakefront communities, property value statistics, and, my personal favorite, a photo of my dock labeled "Proposed Community Asset." "Friends and neighbors," she began, voice dripping with fake sincerity, "we have an opportunity to secure what should have always been ours. For too long, one individual has hoarded our community's most valuable amenity." The room temperature seemed to drop as she painted me as the villain in this bizarre fairy tale. Several newer residents were nodding along, clearly buying her sales pitch about community spirit and shared resources. The previous owner, Mrs. Patterson, always welcomed community use. She understood that in a neighborhood we share resources for everyone's benefit, but now, she gestured dramatically toward where I sat, we have someone who wants to build walls instead of bridges. The manipulation was masterful. She turned my property rights into a morality test about being a good neighbor, but then came her masterstroke, or what she thought was her masterstroke. Veronica brought in someone she introduced as property law consultant Robert Michaels. This guy looked the part: expensive suit, leather briefcase, the kind of smooth confidence that screams billable hours. "Mr. Michaels has reviewed our situation," Veronica announced triumphantly, and confirmed that the HOA has several legal options for securing community access. Michaels stepped forward, adjusting his glasses like he was about to deliver gospel truth. "Based on my preliminary review, there appear to be discrepancies in the current property boundaries. Historical usage patterns may have established implied easements that predate current ownership. Now, back during my firefighting days, I dealt with plenty of smooth-talking insurance adjusters who tried to bamboozle accident victims with impressive-sounding legal nonsense. The trick was always the same: throw around fancy terms while hoping nobody actually understood the law. But here's what Michaels conveniently forgot to mention. Implied easements require continuous, open, and hostile use for at least 20 years under Virginia law. Mrs. Patterson, being occasionally neighborly, didn't even come close. Furthermore," Michaels continued, clearly enjoying his performance, "the county surveyor has agreed to conduct a boundary reassessment to clarify any irregularities in the current property lines." The smell of his cheap cologne mixed with my rising fury as I realized what they were attempting: a fake survey. They were planning to literally steal my land by redrawing the boundaries. That's when Dr. Hawkins, bless her heart, raised her hand with genuine confusion. "Excuse me, but didn't you tell me the lake access was already completely legal and documented when I bought my house?" Veronica's confident mask flickered for just a second. "Well, yes. Traditional access has always existed, but we're looking to formalize the arrangements. Traditional access? Interrupted Frank Morrison, a 20-year resident I'd helped during last winter's ice storm. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd actually been here. Veronica, I've lived here since before you arrived. Mrs. Patterson let neighborhood kids fish occasionally, but nobody ever claimed community rights to that dock. The room's energy shifted like a tide turning. Murmurs started spreading as longtime residents began questioning Veronica's revisionist history. But she wasn't finished. The fact remains, she said, voice rising defensively, that property values throughout Pine Ridge are being artificially depressed by one resident's refusal to participate in community building. My professional analysis shows homes near lake access sell for 15 to 20% more than comparable properties. There it was. She'd just confessed to using my property to boost her sales commissions. I stood up slowly, feeling 43 pairs of eyes focus on me. The creak of my folding chair seemed to echo in the suddenly silent room. Veronica, I said, voice carrying clearly through the tension, you just admitted to using my private property as a selling point for other people's houses. That's fraudulent misrepresentation, and it's grounds for losing your real estate license permanently. The room went dead silent except for the nervous hum of fluorescent lights overhead and someone's coffee cup rattling against a saucer. I've also been documenting your unauthorized use of my property for marketing purposes. 18 separate MLS listings in the past year advertise community lake access that doesn't legally exist. Michael suddenly found his briefcase extremely interesting and started edging toward the exit. The mini twist hit like lightning when Susan Walsh, our HOA treasurer, stood up looking absolutely stricken. Veronica, I never approved any legal consultation payments. Those funds came from our emergency reserve without proper board authorization. The room erupted. Game over. After the treasurer bombshell, you'd think Veronica would retreat and lick her wounds. Instead, she doubled down with the desperate fury of someone watching their empire crumble in real time. 1 week later, I woke up to find professional event planning trucks in my driveway. Not near my property, in my driveway. 3 men in matching polo shirts were unloading sound equipment, portable stages, and what appeared to be a small carnival's worth of infrastructure. My morning coffee turned bitter as I watched strangers treating my property like a public venue. The sweet autumn air now carried the diesel fumes of generators and the sharp scent of fresh spray paint from signs being erected everywhere. "Excuse me," I called out, stepping onto my porch. "What's going on here?" The lead worker, a guy with a clipboard and the patience of someone who deals with confused property owners regularly, looked up. "Pine Ridge Community Festival setup, sir. We're scheduled for full lakefront activation by noon." Lakefront activation, like my grandfather's dock was some kind of corporate asset. "Who authorized this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. HOA President Veronica Blackwell. She said the permits were all handled and the venue was confirmed. He gestured toward my dock. Beautiful spot for the main stage. That's when I noticed the Facebook post notification on my phone. Veronica had outdone herself this time. Pine Ridge Lakefront Festival, this Saturday. Live music, food trucks, family activities at our stunning community waterfront. $50 per family, proceeds benefit neighborhood improvements. Media coverage by Channel 7 News. Media coverage. She'd invited local television to document her theft of my property. The audacity was so breathtaking, I almost admired it. Almost. I spent the morning on damage control calling the event company, the food truck vendors, and Channel 7 News. The conversations were enlightening and legally explosive. Veronica had signed contracts using the HOA's tax ID number, claiming authority she didn't possess to rent facilities she didn't own. Back during my firefighting career, I'd seen plenty of people make bad decisions under pressure, but this was next-level fraud. Every contract she'd signed created additional liability for forgery and misrepresentation. She wasn't just stealing my property anymore. She was committing white-collar crimes that could land her in federal prison. By 11 a.m., cars were already arriving. Not just neighbors, we're talking families from 3 counties who'd seen the Facebook promotion. The crunch of gravel under hundreds of vehicles mixed with children's laughter and the smell of carnival food as my peaceful lakefront transformed into a county fair. Veronica arrived in a rented golf cart decorated like a parade float, wearing what I can only describe as a politician's costume. Red blazer, white pants, and a smile that could power the entire sound system. She had 2 local reporters following her, filming what she clearly intended as her triumphant moment. "Welcome to Pine Ridge's inaugural Lakefront Festival," she announced through a professional-grade megaphone. Today we celebrate our beautiful community amenities and the spirit of neighborhood cooperation. 300 people applauded while she gestured toward my dock like she was unveiling a monument. The PA system crackled to life with upbeat music as families spread blankets on my lawn and kids ran toward my grandfather's carefully maintained shoreline. That's when I decided to crash my own party. I walked out carrying a folding chair, a thermos of coffee, and my phone set to live stream everything. The crunch of fallen leaves under my boots provided perfect autumn soundtrack as I positioned myself directly between the festival crowd and my dock. "Good morning, everyone," I called out cheerfully, waving to the confused crowd. "Beautiful day for a festival." Veronica's megaphone nearly slipped from her hands. The reporters immediately swung their cameras toward me, sensing drama. "Marcus, how wonderful that you're joining our community celebration," she managed, but her voice was already cracking. "Oh, I wouldn't miss it," I replied, settling into my chair with theatrical comfort. "Especially since it's happening on my private property without permission, using forged contracts and fraudulent permits." The crowd noise died like someone had cut power to the entire event. 300 people suddenly realized they might be witnessing a crime in progress. "Now, I hate to rain on this lovely parade," I continued, pulling out official documents, "but I've spent the morning with county officials. Turns out using someone else's property address for commercial permits is a felony." The Channel 7 reporter stepped forward, camera rolling. "Sir, are you saying this festival is unauthorized?" "I'm saying," I stood up with my grandfather's property deed in hand, "that Veronica Blackwell has been systematically defrauding buyers, forging permits, and stealing community funds to support a real estate scam that's about to collapse spectacularly." The mini twist hit when someone in the crowd shouted, "Wait! I paid $50 for guaranteed lake access. Where's my refund?" That's when the dam burst. Voices erupted from every direction. "This was supposed to be legitimate. Are we trespassing right now? I want my money back." Veronica's festival crowd was becoming an angry mob. Angry at her, not me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, enjoying every second, "you've just witnessed real estate fraud in action, and it's all been recorded for posterity." The sound of car doors slamming filled the air as Veronica's empire collapsed one festival ticket at a time, live on local television. The festival fiasco was just the tip of the iceberg. What I discovered next would have made my grandfather roll over in his grave and guaranteed Veronica a federal prison sentence. 3 days after the media circus, my attorney friend David Kim called with news that made my coffee turn cold in my hands. He'd been digging through public records as a favor, and what he found was a criminal conspiracy spanning multiple states. "Marcus," he said, voice tight with barely controlled fury, "you need to sit down for this." I was already sitting, but I set my mug down carefully as he continued, the morning air suddenly feeling thick with approaching storm clouds. "Veronica hasn't just been advertising your lake access to sell houses. She's been collecting what she calls premium community amenity fees from buyers, $3,000 per house for guaranteed lakefront privileges. In the past 3 years, she's stolen $45,000 from families who thought they were buying into a legitimate lakefront community. $45,000, systematically stolen from working families who'd trusted her professional credentials. But that wasn't even the worst part. Here's where it becomes federal," David continued, and I could hear papers rustling through the phone. "She listed your dock as an official HOA asset on the community's insurance policy. Claiming ownership of property to reduce premiums is felony insurance fraud. And it gets worse. The insurance company is about to void your entire community's coverage." The metallic taste of pure rage flooded my mouth. During my firefighting career, I'd learned that the most dangerous emergencies aren't the obvious ones. They're the hidden threats that can destroy everything before you realize what's happening. "If someone gets hurt during one of her unauthorized events," David explained, "the insurance company will deny all claims. Your community could face millions in personal liability, and every mortgage company will demand immediate full payment when they discover the fraud." My hands actually trembled as the implications crashed over me. Veronica hadn't just been stealing from individual buyers and trespassing on my property. She'd been playing Russian roulette with 47 families' entire financial futures. "There's more," David said grimly. "I ran her license history through my investigator contacts. She's done this exact scheme in 2 other communities. One in North Carolina, another in Tennessee. Both times, she disappeared just before state authorities caught up with her violations. We're dealing with a serial real estate predator. The sweet scent of autumn leaves burning somewhere in the distance mixed with my rising determination. This wasn't just about my property anymore. This was about stopping a career criminal who'd been systematically destroying communities for profit. But the nuclear revelation came next. Marcus, the insurance cancellation notice goes out Friday. After that, you're looking at a financial cascade that could bankrupt your entire neighborhood. When insurance gets voided for fraud, mortgage companies typically call loans immediately. People could lose their homes within 60 days. 3 days. We had 72 hours to prevent a disaster that would make families homeless through no fault of their own. During my 2 decades fighting fires, I'd learned that when people's lives are threatened, you don't hesitate. You act with overwhelming force to eliminate the danger completely. "What's our nuclear option?" I asked, standing up and walking toward my grandfather's framed property deed. "Criminal referral to the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, emergency asset freeze, immediate notification to the state attorney general, and full media exposure," David replied. "She picked the wrong community to defraud. Insurance fraud involving systematic community theft triggers federal RICO prosecution. We're talking 20-year sentences." For the first time in months, the morning air smelled like victory instead of violation. "David," I said, touching my grandfather's signature on the 40-year-old deed, "let's end her." The power had officially shifted. Veronica's empire was about to become her prison sentence. Within 6 hours of David's call, my living room had transformed into a command center that would have impressed a FBI task force. Maps, financial documents, laptops, and legal pads covered every surface, while the aroma of strong coffee mixed with the electric tension of people preparing to take down a career criminal. David arrived first, carrying 2 briefcases and wearing the expression of an attorney who'd found his dream case. "I've got direct contacts at the State Attorney General's office and the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Both agencies have been tracking multi-state real estate fraud patterns, and Veronica just became their prime target." Susan Walsh appeared next, our HOA treasurer and retired CPA, who'd been secretly documenting every financial irregularity for months. She spread 3 years of meticulously organized bank statements across my kitchen table, like a forensic accountant preparing for the trial of the century. $23,000 in unauthorized legal fees paid to firms that coincidentally handle her real estate transactions, Susan said, pointing to highlighted entries with surgical precision. $8,000 in community improvements that exclusively benefited her street. But here's the smoking gun. She's been systematically transferring HOA funds into a shell account she controls. Our secret weapon walked in carrying a laptop and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who'd been hunting this particular predator for months. Agent Patricia Thompson from the State Insurance Fraud Division had been building a case against Veronica since receiving anonymous tips about systematic asset misrepresentation. "Mr. Presley," she said, gripping my hand with the confidence of someone who arrests white-collar criminals for a living, "your documentation is the missing link we needed for federal prosecution. Veronica Blackwell has been operating an organized criminal enterprise across state lines." She opened her laptop, revealing a digital map studded with pins marking Veronica's previous hunting grounds. Tennessee, North Carolina, now Virginia. Identical pattern every time: infiltrate HOA leadership, fabricate community ownership of private amenities, collect fraudulent access fees, manipulate insurance policies to reduce premiums illegally. The scope was staggering. During my firefighting career, I'd learned that the most dangerous threats are systematic ones. Problems that spread silently until they destroy everything in their path. This wasn't just neighborhood drama, it was organized crime. Total confirmed theft across 3 states, $180,000, Thompson continued. Insurance fraud damages estimated at $2.3 million. But she made one critical mistake. She targeted a community with a retired firefighter who understands evidence documentation and systematic threat elimination. David leaned forward, legal instincts fully engaged. "What's our prosecution timeline?" "Here's where federal intervention becomes powerful," Thompson explained, pulling up case files. "RICO statutes allow us to freeze assets immediately, force full restitution, and coordinate with insurance companies to maintain community coverage during prosecution. But timing is everything. She's already started moving money offshore." I'd been taking notes, but now I stood up and walked to my whiteboard, a habit from my fire department days when planning emergency responses. "We need coordinated simultaneous strikes. She can't be allowed to escape like she did in Tennessee and North Carolina." "Exactly," David agreed. "Here's our battle plan. Criminal referral to FBI with complete documentation. Emergency federal asset freeze. Insurance fraud report to Attorney General. Real estate commission complaint for permanent license revocation. All filed simultaneously within 24 hours. Susan raised a crucial point. What about community protection? These families need immediate notification before their insurance gets canceled and mortgages get called. That's our trap, I said, the firefighter in me recognizing the perfect tactical opportunity. We schedule an emergency HOA meeting, invite local media for transparency, and let Veronica walk into a room full of federal agents and her victims. Agent Thompson smiled grimly. Public exposure prevents flight and creates additional witness testimony. Perfect. But we needed more than just legal coordination. From my emergency response experience, I knew that successful operations require redundant documentation and multiple evidence sources. Susan, I need you to photograph every financial record and create duplicate files stored off-site, I directed. David, prepare federal court filings, but don't submit until we have all agencies coordinated. Agent Thompson, can you arrange for FBI financial crimes investigators to attend our community meeting? Already planned, she replied. They'll be there with arrest warrants. The technical details were crucial. Understanding federal financial crime prosecution had taught me that successful cases require overwhelming documentation. When someone commits systematic fraud across state lines, prosecutors can use RICO statutes to treat individual crimes as part of a criminal enterprise, turning misdemeanor theft into federal felonies carrying 20-year sentences. Here's what Veronica doesn't understand, I said, looking out at my grandfather's dock. She thinks she's dealing with confused neighbors and local politics. She has no idea that she's been federally investigated for months and that every crime she's committed here is documented evidence for a RICO prosecution. The sweet scent of autumn leaves burning somewhere distant mixed with the satisfaction of knowing we were about to end a criminal career that had destroyed multiple communities. 48 hours, David announced, checking his watch. By Saturday night, Veronica Blackwell will be in federal custody, our community will be protected, and her victims will start getting their money back. From fighting fires, I'd learned that when you detect a hidden threat that could destroy people's homes, you don't negotiate or warn the danger away. You eliminate it completely, systematically, and permanently. Veronica must have sensed the federal noose tightening around her neck because she went full scorched earth mode with the desperation of a cornered animal. The morning after our war room meeting, I woke up to find all 12 of my property boundary markers missing, professionally removed overnight with surgical precision like they'd never existed. The metallic taste of pure rage filled my mouth as I surveyed the damage. Someone had used professional surveying equipment to extract every stake without leaving tool marks. This wasn't random vandalism. This was systematic evidence destruction. But that was just her opening gambit. By noon, she'd hired Harrison Webb, a sharp-suited criminal defense attorney who specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for making federal cases disappear. The irony was exquisite. She was using stolen HOA funds to pay for legal defense against charges of stealing HOA funds. Webb's first strike was a cease and desist letter that arrived via certified mail, reeking of expensive cologne and legal intimidation. 20 pages of threats designed to silence anyone without deep pockets. Mr. Presley's defamatory harassment campaign constitutes intentional infliction of emotional distress, interference with contractual relations, and malicious persecution. Immediate cessation is demanded, or criminal and civil remedies exceeding $500,000 will be pursued. Classic predator tactics. Make the victim afraid to fight back by threatening financial annihilation through endless litigation. But Veronica's desperation was just getting started. That afternoon, my security cameras captured footage that made my firefighter instincts scream danger. Her teenage son Tyler was systematically destroying my fish habitat structures with a crowbar while she sat in her BMW directing the operation like a demolition supervisor. The sound of splintering wood mixed with Tyler's gleeful laughter as thousands of dollars in environmental improvements vanished into floating debris. The kid was actually live streaming the vandalism on TikTok with captions like "cleaning up our lake" and "community property belongs to the community." The entitlement was clearly hereditary. When Deputy Rodriguez responded to my call, Veronica's criminal sophistication became apparent. She'd filed a preemptive harassment complaint, claiming I'd been stalking her family and creating a hostile environment through systematic intimidation. "Mr. Presley," Rodriguez said, reviewing his official notes, "Miss Blackwell submitted a formal complaint yesterday with photographs allegedly showing you photographing her residence and following her vehicle. Every accusation was fabricated, but she'd created enough official documentation to muddy the legal waters. During my firefighting career, I'd seen arsonists use identical tactics, generate false evidence and confusion to delay investigation while covering their tracks." "Deputy," I said, pulling out my phone with steady hands, I have security footage showing her directing her son to destroy my property. Would you like to see the actual crimes being committed?" His expression transformed as we watched Tyler demolishing fish habitats while his mother coordinated from her car, the autumn sunlight glinting off her jewelry as she gestured like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. "That's conspiracy to commit destruction of private property," Rodriguez said grimly. "But here's the complication. She's also filed environmental violation complaints claiming your dock modifications damage wetland ecosystems." The mini twist hit like lightning when Rodriguez's radio suddenly crackled with a transmission that froze both of us. "All units, be advised. Federal agents requesting immediate local assistance for pending multi-jurisdictional financial crimes investigation, Pine Ridge Subdivision." Veronica's expensive attorney had no idea that while he was sending threatening letters, FBI agents were finalizing arrest warrants. But her desperation campaign wasn't finished. That evening, our neighborhood Facebook group exploded with a coordinated psychological warfare attack that bore the hallmarks of professional crisis management. Multiple concerned residents posted identical complaints about my increasingly erratic behavior and threats against community safety. The posts were too sophisticated, too coordinated for random neighbors. Someone was paying for professional reputation destruction while federal investigators closed their trap. Janet Rodriguez called at 9 p.m., voice trembling with barely controlled fury. "Marcus, someone left anonymous notes on 5 neighbors' cars tonight, threatening messages about what happens to residents who support troublemakers. She's trying to terrorize people into silence." From my 2 decades fighting fires, I recognized the escalation pattern. When criminals feel cornered, they become exponentially more dangerous. Veronica wasn't just covering up fraud anymore. She was actively intimidating federal witnesses and obstructing justice. But here's what neither she nor her expensive attorney understood. Every threatening note, every act of vandalism, every false police report was generating additional federal charges. Witness intimidation during federal investigation carries mandatory prison time, and obstruction of justice can double existing sentences. Agent Thompson's 10 p.m. call delivered news that made the evening air smell like victory. "Marcus, she just committed career-ending mistakes. Our surveillance recorded conversations with Webb about temporary asset relocation and family safety preparations. Flight risk behavior triggers immediate arrest authority. The sound of autumn wind howling through my grandfather's trees mixed with the sweet satisfaction of knowing Veronica's criminal empire was about to collapse permanently." "Timeline for arrest?" I asked. "Saturday morning, during your HOA meeting, in front of every family she's defrauded, with media present. Perfect justice. She'd be arrested while surrounded by her victims on live television with federal agents she never saw coming." Friday morning brought Veronica's final, most desperate gambit. One so audacious it would have been impressive if it weren't completely insane. She called an emergency executive session of the HOA board, scheduled for 6 a.m. at her house, with an agenda that read like a dictator's playbook. Motion to remove disruptive member Marcus Presley for violation of community standards and harassment of board leadership. She was trying to vote me out of my own neighborhood while federal agents prepared arrest warrants. The woman had completely lost touch with reality. But here's where her criminal arrogance reached peak insanity. She'd only notified 2 of the 5 board members, the ones she thought she could control. Frank Morrison and Dr. Hawkins never received meeting notices, making any votes legally invalid. During my firefighting days, I'd seen people make catastrophically bad decisions under pressure, but this was next-level stupid. Susan Walsh called me at 5:30 a.m., voice tight with controlled fury. "Marcus, she's planning to pass a resolution declaring your property abandoned due to failure to maintain community standards. Then she wants to authorize HOA maintenance of the lakefront area. They were planning to steal my property through fraudulent HOA resolutions while I was excluded from the vote. Grand theft through parliamentary procedure." I arrived at Veronica's house at exactly 6 a.m., carrying my coffee and a smile that would have made a shark nervous. The sweet smell of morning dew mixed with the acrid scent of desperation as I knocked on her front door. "Marcus," she gasped, clearly not expecting me to show up uninvited to my own removal hearing. "This is a closed executive session." "Actually, Veronica," I said, walking past her into her pristine living room where 2 confused board members sat with legal documents spread across her glass coffee table. "Virginia HOA law requires all members be notified of any meeting affecting their property rights." "Funny how you forgot that detail." Her face went through several interesting color changes as she realized I wasn't just showing up. I was recording everything on my phone. Furthermore, I continued, settling into her expensive white sofa like I owned the place, I've brought some interesting reading material for everyone. I pulled out a thick manila envelope that Agent Thompson had delivered at dawn. Federal criminal indictment charging Veronica Blackwell with mail fraud, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and racketeering under RICO statutes. Arrest scheduled for, I checked my watch theatrically, about 4 hours from now. The room went silent except for the ticking of Veronica's grandfather clock and what sounded like her attorney's coffee cup rattling against his saucer. "That's not real," she whispered, but her voice was already cracking. "You're making this up to disrupt legitimate HOA business." "Oh, it's very real," I replied, opening the envelope and reading directly from official federal documents. United States District Court, Eastern District of Virginia, criminal case number 2024-CR00847. The United States of America versus Veronica Lynn Blackwell. Board member Tom Wilson, who'd been silent until now, suddenly found his voice. "Veronica, what the hell is going on? Are you saying we're sitting in a criminal's living room planning to steal someone's property?" The mini twist hit when my phone buzzed with a text from Agent Thompson. "Suspect attempting to transfer additional funds. Moving up timeline. Arrest in 30 minutes. "Actually," I announced, standing up and walking toward the window, "we need to wrap this up quickly. The FBI will be here in about half an hour to arrest our esteemed HOA president for multiple federal felonies." That's when Veronica's last shred of sanity snapped completely. "You bastard!" she screamed, lunging toward me with what appeared to be a letter opener from her coffee table. "You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my life." Tom Wilson and the other board member scrambled backward as she waved the blade around like a deranged Shakespeare character. "I built this community. I increased everyone's property values, and this is how you repay me? By stealing from families and defrauding an entire neighborhood?" I asked calmly, staying just out of letter opener range. "Yeah, Veronica, that's exactly how we repay systematic criminal behavior." The sound of sirens in the distance mixed with her increasingly hysterical ranting as she realized her empire was collapsing in real time. "You have no idea what you've done. When I go down, I'm taking everyone with me." "Actually," I said, checking my phone as the sirens grew louder, "when you go down, you're going down alone. Federal prosecutors offered immunity deals to anyone who cooperated with the investigation. Guess how many people chose to protect you?" Her face went from rage red to panic pale as the implications hit her. 0. Nobody was willing to go to prison for Veronica Blackwell. The sound of car doors slamming and heavy footsteps on her front walkway signaled the end of her criminal career. Through her window, I could see Agent Thompson and 2 FBI agents approaching with what looked like arrest warrants and asset seizure orders. "Game over, Veronica," I said, setting my coffee cup on her expensive table. "Time to face the consequences of stealing from working families." The sweet autumn air through her open window suddenly smelled like justice. Saturday evening, 6 p.m. sharp. Pine Ridge Community Center had never seen anything like it. 200-plus residents packed into a room designed for 75, with Channel 7 News, 3 FBI agents, a state attorney general representative, and enough legal documentation to wallpaper the building. The smell of nervous sweat mixed with industrial carpet cleaner as residents whispered among themselves, sensing they were about to witness something historic. Veronica hadn't been seen since her Friday morning arrest, but her attorney Harrison Webb sat in the front row looking like a man who wished he'd chosen a different profession. I'd positioned myself near the back, watching the crowd with the satisfaction of a firefighter who'd successfully contained a dangerous blaze before it could spread. Agent Thompson stood casually by the exit, wearing the expression of someone holding a royal flush in a poker game. At exactly 6:05, Veronica made her grand entrance. She walked in wearing an expensive navy business suit, flanked by 2 private security guards she'd apparently hired with her remaining liquid assets. Her chin was raised defiantly, but I could see her hands trembling as she carried a thick folder of what looked like legal documents. The room fell dead silent except for the quiet hum of news cameras rolling. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, voice projecting false confidence across the packed room, "I've called this meeting to address the malicious lies and character assassination being perpetrated against me by certain disruptive residents." The audacity was breathtaking. She was trying to control the narrative while facing federal prosecution. "For 6 years, I've devoted my life to improving this community, increasing property values, and creating amenities that benefit everyone. And how am I repaid? With false accusations, harassment, and what can only be described as a coordinated conspiracy to destroy my reputation. Dr. Hawkins raised her hand tentatively. Veronica, are the federal charges real? Because we've heard lies. Veronica cut her off, voice cracking with hysteria. Fabricated by a vindictive neighbor who can't stand the thought of sharing community resources. That's when I decided it was time for the mic drop moment. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room focus on me, and pulled out a thick binder that Agent Thompson had prepared. Ladies and gentlemen, since Veronica seems confused about the facts, let me clarify the situation. The click of my binder opening echoed in the sudden silence. Veronica Blackwell was arrested yesterday morning on 17 federal charges including mail fraud, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and racketeering under RICO statutes. She's been systematically defrauding this community for 3 years. Gasps erupted throughout the room as residents realized they were staring at an actual federal criminal. She's collected $45,000 in fraudulent lake access fees from families in this room. She's manipulated our insurance policy through false asset claims, putting every mortgage at risk. And she's done this exact same scheme in Tennessee and North Carolina before fleeing to avoid prosecution. Agent Thompson stepped forward, badge clearly visible, voice carrying the authority of federal law enforcement. Mr. Presley is correct. Miss Blackwell is currently released on $500,000 bond pending trial. Her assets have been frozen and restitution proceedings are underway. The room erupted in angry voices as residents realized the scope of their betrayal. Where's my $3,000 lake fee? My insurance could have been canceled. She did this in other states, but Veronica wasn't finished with her performance. She grabbed the microphone from the HOA podium, voice rising to near hysteria. This is a witch hunt. I built this community from nothing. I increased your property values. I created the lifestyle you all enjoy. By stealing from us, Janet Rodriguez shouted from the middle of the room. You took our money for amenities you don't own. I gave you community, Veronica screamed back. I gave you vision, and this is how you repay me? The defining moment came when Susan Walsh stood up, holding 3 years of financial records. Veronica, you embezzled $23,000 from community funds. You filed fraudulent insurance claims. You've been running a criminal enterprise, and everyone in this room is your victim. That's when the full weight of her situation hit Veronica like a freight train. The room was filled with people she'd systematically defrauded, federal agents with arrest powers, media cameras recording every word, and legal evidence that would send her to prison for decades. She looked around the room desperately, searching for any sympathetic face, any ally who might defend her. She found none. Fine, she shrieked, throwing the microphone down so hard it squealed with feedback. Fine! You want to destroy me? I'll take this entire community down with me. When I'm done testifying, nobody's property will be safe. But Agent Thompson was already moving, handcuffs appearing like magic. Veronica Blackwell, you're under arrest for violation of bond conditions and threats against federal witnesses. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut mixed with 200 residents erupting in applause as Veronica's reign of terror officially ended. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced as she was led away, your community is officially free. The taste of victory was sweeter than my grandfather's honeysuckle. The morning mist rises off Clearwater Lake like my grandfather's spirit giving his blessing as I sit on our family dock with coffee that tastes like victory. Golden sunrise paints the water in shades of justice while the sweet scent of honeysuckle drifts across lakefront that's finally, permanently mine. 6 months have passed since Veronica's spectacular arrest, and the transformation has been nothing short of miraculous. Her federal trial was a prosecutor's dream and a criminal's nightmare. She pled guilty to avoid a 20-year RICO sentence, ultimately receiving 4 years in federal prison, plus full restitution of $127,000 to every family she'd defrauded. Her real estate license was permanently revoked in 12 states, and the FBI now uses her case as a textbook example for prosecuting similar HOA fraud schemes nationwide. Community healing happened with the speed of neighbors who'd finally found their voice. Within 2 weeks of her perp walk, we'd elected a new board with Susan Walsh as president, Dr. Hawkins as treasurer, and transparency requirements that would make a government auditor weep with joy. Every expenditure over $500 now requires resident pre-approval, and monthly financial reports are published online where everyone can see exactly where their money goes. The sweet irony came when our insurance company not only maintained coverage, but reduced our premiums by 15% after removing Veronica's fraudulent claims. Turns out, honest reporting actually saves money. Revolutionary concept, right? All 23 defrauded families received full compensation through federal asset seizure. But the real healing came from what they did with their settlements. Dr. Hawkins established a community legal aid fund. Frank Morrison created a neighborhood watch program focused on helping rather than harassing, and Janet Rodriguez started a scholarship program for kids pursuing law enforcement careers. My property rights are now protected by legal documentation so bulletproof it could survive nuclear war, but more importantly, my dock has become what my grandfather always intended. A place where community happens naturally instead of being mandated by HOA dictators. The crowning achievement came when I organized our first Clean Water Conservation Festival on the lakefront. Not as an HOA requirement, but as a genuine celebration of what neighbors can accomplish when they work together instead of against each other. That festival raised $25,000 for the Property Rights Legal Defense Fund, a scholarship program for law students studying HOA reform and community advocacy. The first recipient was Janet's granddaughter Maria, who's pursuing environmental law with a focus on protecting families from corporate and bureaucratic predators. Our lake conservation partnership with Virginia Fish and Wildlife has become a state model for community environmental stewardship. My dock now serves as an educational platform where local children learn about water ecology, and watching kids discover the magic of fishing in clean water reminds me daily why protecting this legacy mattered so much. The festival has grown into something that would make my grandfather proud. 500+ visitors last year, food trucks run by community members, live music from local bands, and activities that unite families instead of dividing them. The proceeds now fund 3 scholarships and an emergency assistance program for neighbors facing unexpected hardships. Personal transformation came in ways I never expected. I became a state-certified HOA ombudsman, helping other communities resolve disputes before they escalate to federal crimes. Last month, I testified before the Virginia legislature about reform legislation that will prevent future Veronicas from systematically destroying communities. The book deal surprised everyone. How I Beat HOA Fraud and Saved My Community launches next spring, with all proceeds funding the Legal Defense Scholarship. Apparently, people love stories where ordinary citizens defeat systematic corruption through preparation, persistence, and refusing to be intimidated by bullies. But the deepest satisfaction comes from quiet moments like this morning, sitting where my grandfather taught me that property rights aren't just about land, they're about protecting families and preserving legacies for future generations. My phone buzzes with a text from Agent Thompson. New multi-state HOA fraud case in North Carolina. Need your expertise. The answer is always yes, because communities everywhere deserve protection from predators who steal dreams for profit. Morning bird songs mix with distant children's laughter from our playground as the mist clears to reveal a lake that's peaceful, protected, and permanent. This is what victory sounds like when good people refuse to let criminals win. What began as a property dispute became a federal case that saved dozens of families and created lasting, positive change. Sometimes standing up to one bully protects everyone. Drop your HOA nightmare story below. I investigate the wildest cases and help communities fight back against systematic corruption. Subscribe for more David versus Goliath victories, where preparation and community solidarity defeat organized crime. Justice tastes like morning coffee and smells like honeysuckle.